Hello, anyone who might be tuning in early. Well, technically not really early, but kind of early. Anyways, I start the presentation at 5 after the top of the hour. So, I mean, as you can see on the little presentation thing, we start in 5 minutes. However, if you do drop in and you are here, please just go ahead and drop something in the chat and let me know that you're here. I'll be happy to acknowledge you. The first 5 minutes is usually a nice little time to welcome and meet and greet people. So welcome if you are dropping in, and don't hesitate to drop something in the chat so I know you're here. I'm working on grabbing the link to the live and making sure that it gets shared. Hello, hello, whoever has dropped in. I obviously don't know. So please drop something in the chat so I know who you are. Just say something. Oh, sorry. I forgot. I put my mic on my jacket, so I hope that there's like no interference. And also, I just realized this is probably going to be the first week that I don't wear my glasses. How crazy. We're going to see how it works, how that works out. But anyways, for anyone who might be dropping in who is not familiar with the process, I usually start the presentation at 5 minutes after the top of the hour. So for me, it'll be 5:05. It is currently 5:02 for me right now, so I'll start the presentation officially in like 2 minutes. Like I said though before, I'm showing 2 people here, and I'm super grateful for that. Don't hesitate to drop something in the chat, like as I'm talking, or even right now, introduce yourself, say hello, because that's just the nice thing to do. It's called online etiquette, guys. Well, I don't know if you're guys, but people. I don't know, you could be aliens, like I said. Anyways, awkward silence. It'd be like that. If only YouTube, wasn't so like iffy about music, then I could use music in the background. But see, even Instagram doesn't like it when you use music in the background, so we're just stuck with this. We're stuck with me, just me talking and filling the silence, because nobody wants to just sit here silently, right? And I realize I'm totally just talking to myself, but I guess that's why I'm entertaining, right? I'm sorry. Yeah, I laugh at my own jokes because I'm weird. Okay, sorry if y'all heard that. I had to unzip my jacket or just move the zipper down. Anyways, we have less than a minute until I officially start, and I'll be super grateful. Yep. As you guys can see, this is Inside the Criminal Mind. I'm just going to go ahead and start. Episode 7 for me, but the Criminal Minds episode that we are covering is Zugzwang, which is season 8, episode 12 of Criminal Minds. So yeah. And also for anyone who might be dropping in for the first time, thank you for dropping in. This is Inside the Criminal Mind, where I break down Criminal Minds episodes and basically talk about the victimology and the criminology and how we can prevent such behavior from actually taking place. Now, obviously, these are theoretical assumptions, theoretical orientations, and theoretical perspectives. I am not a doctor, however, I will be here in about 4 years. But anyways, moving on. Where am I? Where's my mouse? There it is. Okay. Anyways. Oh, and also I used a different look, a different presentation, because I got tired of seeing the other one, and I'm like, I want to do something new. So also 505. Anyways, here's my overview. First, I'm going to do the introduction like always. I'm going to do a synopsis of the episode. I'm going to get into the criminology and victimology of the criminal and victim that is highlighted in this episode. I'm also going to do criminal victim prevention, where I break down how these types of behaviors or these events could have been prevented and possibly saved some lives. And then we're going to get into the conclusion. Anyways, I'm kind of jumping ahead, but introduction, as always, I'm Sharissa. If you know me anywhere else, you might know me from Eradication Writer on Instagram, Eradication Lady on Twitter, and otherwise you should know me by my name, and my name is Sharissa. I've had my own mental health journey. It has been an interesting one. I'm sorry, my nose is like bothering me. Okay. I've had my own mental health journey, and it was not very easy to begin with, but I was very inspired once I started taking control of my life, and I realized that other people also kind of had similar struggles, and I seemed to have helped during their struggles, and that inspired me to know that there is a profession out there for me that has to do with psychology, and that's something that motivated me to want to achieve my master's in psychology and become a life coach and a wellness coach, which I'm super passionate about, and I'm very happy to speak to people about things that I am passionate about. So that leads perfectly into place with my mission. My mission really is to gain my doctorate degree and to utilize that doctorate degree to contribute to psychological research and use psychological research to speak to the masses. Not really to speak to the masses, but like to speak to schools and workplaces and organizations and specific events, just because psychology is super important. And it has the potential to solve a lot of the society's issues. If we can really break things down to a singular level, then it can really put things in perspective and provide extra solutions that might actually solve the issues. Anyways, moving forward, why this series? Well, Criminal Minds has a lot of different episodes. They go into depth. They show that criminal behavior can be related to societal issues. And there's multiple examples of behavior. And there's multiple perspectives to show this type of behavior. So, like, Criminal Minds is just one of those top tier kind of shows that kind of helps give those examples to people, because obviously for people who are just like dromedaries and they love watching dramatized documentaries or true crime shows and stuff, a lot of people who just watch these these true crime shows, they might not notice the way that they really work into society and the way that they actually make sense with society and how these types of behaviors could have possibly been prevented. All it takes is just a little bit of explanation, and that's why I'm here. It's a part of my mission to normalize these conversations and to make the psychological principles a lot easier to understand for the common public, because like I said, there's so much potential to solve societal issues with psychology, and that's something that I'm just super passionate about doing. Anyways, Criminal Minds. Again, like I said, it's just, there's a lot of psychology of a basis behind it. And it's something that a lot of people can just really feel. Like, I've known a lot of people that are moved by these episodes for specific reasons. Anyways, moving on. The synopsis. So this episode, I know that synopsis is like, you know, out of, you can't really see it, but y'all know what it says. Anyways, synopsis. This was a continuation, like it seems like all of the episodes have been here lately. This is a continuation of an episode before where Spencer had been talking to a woman. Hold on, where's my notes at? I have to have my notes, you guys. Okay. This episode was a continuation where Spencer had been talking to a woman whom he has not met in person yet. They planned to meet, however, she had a stalker whom Spencer was sure that he spotted on their date night and urged her to go back home whenever she was already outside of the restaurant. At the beginning of this current episode, Spencer receives a phone call that drops a hint. Only Spencer would understand, that instantly signals him that his mystery girl could be in trouble. By the middle of the episode, it was obvious that the mystery girl's ex-fiance's girlfriend was actually part of a bigger plan. Unfortunately, this was one of those episodes with not the happiest of endings. Bobby, Maeve's ex-fiance, Maeve, and Diane all died. Spoiler alert, I'm sorry, I should have told you guys beforehand. But like I was saying, not the happiest of endings. I wanted to save everybody that heartbreak and tell you guys now. But yeah, this episode was really interesting. I find it funny. Michelle Trachtenberg, I feel like she always ends up, she plays a bad guy, like really good. And maybe not bad guy, I'm sorry, I'm terrible with that. But she plays a criminal in almost anything that I've seen her play in. She plays it so well. And I totally forgot that she was in this episode. Like I said, I've watched these episodes at least once, but it's always crazy revisiting them and being like, oh yeah, I forgot that she did that. So yeah, it was very interesting the way that she worked and the things that she did. It was a little hard for me to follow whenever I was taking notes, but something that was just so interesting about her character is the fact that she really simmered. Like, she really simmered on the fact that she was rejected. And I mean, I can understand in a way because, I mean, yeah, like, especially if you feel completely passionate about something, like, for instance, her PhD thesis, that she worked so hard on that had to do with suicide. And the reason why it was rejected by Maeve was because that it was biased. The research in it was biased because she was including examples of her parents whom killed themselves when she was a child. So, and I've learned a lot about like biased research, considering how you have to take very specific research classes whenever you're studying psychology specifically. And even like research is important, that if you are going to use personal examples, that should definitely be stated like thereon, like from the initial contact or like the initial like structuring of the whole research. Like, it's very important to acknowledge whenever there is like personal emotionality involved in the research. So it was something that was heavy for her, for Diane, the character. Anyways, and yeah, she really focused on that. She focused on that one thing because she felt like that basically ended her life. That kept her from earning her doctorate, and so she was forced to take like a lesser job at a community college or at a junior college. And so yeah, like I said, she harbored that anger, she harbored that rejection, and it definitely turned into something that she could not ignore. So let's get into some of the criminology and victimology of these people. We're not really going to look at Bobby too much, which was Maeve's ex-fiance. just because he didn't play too much of a role as being like a criminal or even a victim. However, yes, he was very much a victim. He did get shot in the head by Diane. But it was literally like the middle of the episode. But anyways, so criminology, we're going to look at Diane Turner. That was played by Michelle Trachtenberg. She was motivated by Maeve's rejection to seek harm. Where is my notes? I'm always doing this, you guys. I'm sorry. Okay. Ultimately, Diane wanted revenge. She was angry over Maeve's rejection of her PhD thesis and that she was being withheld what she deserved. We know that her parents' deaths when she was a child had a major impact as she based her thesis on her parents' suicide, making the end of this episode that much more interesting. So whenever we're looking at the criminology and we're looking at why this possible thing could have happened, well, how could this have happened? Well, I mean, if we look at it, we know that her parents made something to her. Like I just said, whenever I was explaining in the synopsis, we know that her parents' death meant a lot to her. It forced her to have to go into like an orphanage. And I mean, from everything that we pretty much know, like at least stereotypically about orphanages, is that sometimes they don't provide the best care. Sometimes there's not enough emotional care, mental health care, physical health care, and stuff to go around. I mean, at least physical health care because, yeah, but there's not enough emotional support. Let alone if it's an orphanage and if you grow up in that orphanage and you don't actually have the structure of a safe home, then, you know, you're going to end up missing out on some of those areas that make you feel safe and secure and able to self-actualize. You know, she believed that she was very smart, and she was, especially if she made it to the point of attempting to get her PhD. Obviously, she has to be some sort of smart because it's not the easiest thing to do. So, you know, whenever she was rejected by Maeve on her PhD thesis, it definitely, more than likely, hit her confidence to a level that she probably could not ignore. That ended with that basically caused this episode it culminated in a murder-suicide, or a kind of murder-suicide. Like, I mean, she killed Bobby, but then it got to the very end and she was holding the gun to Maeve, but then, you know, Spencer was talking to her and then she ended up taking the gun, pointing it to herself, and whenever she pulled the trigger, the bullet went through her head and went through Maeve's head as well. So, it was very tragic to me, I'm not gonna lie. And I cry all the time. I cry in like all these episodes, but specifically, like this episode just really hit me on a different level because I'm like, really, they had to kill both of them? Like they couldn't save one. Ugh, it was tragic. And it sucks, but yeah. Anyways, so we're going to look at the victimology now, and then we have Maeve Donovan, which, you know, yeah, I am going to consider her a victim because she was stalked for 10 months, I think it said. She was stalked for 10 months. And yeah, hold on, let me actually read my notes. Okay. Maeve, unfortunately, was a victim in this episode. Her ability to do her job created a target on her back because Diane felt like she deserved to be a doctor. But she was stalked for an amount of time, 10 months, creating paranoia, and then she ultimately lost her life, which, you know, is not the easiest thing to consider. Obviously, like, having a stalker is never the easiest thing. And for Maeve, you know, she was definitely blindsided. It was obvious in the beginning-ish of the episode whenever they revisited Maeve's house after she was kidnapped. You know, you could tell there wasn't any signs of forced entry or a struggle. There was a struggle, but there wasn't any signs of forced entry into her apartment. So showing that Diane most definitely probably showed up and was like, hey, you know, some whatever, and then obviously got Maeve to open the door, and then obviously that's whenever the struggle started, or if not immediately, that's how she was able to get inside the apartment. because obviously women want to believe and trust other women, but these types of situations is what makes it hard to do that. But yeah. So, yeah, I mean, she was being stalked for 10 months. She imagined it was probably a man. She didn't know actually who it was. Her parents were the ones who named off Bobby, her ex-fiance. They said that they didn't like him very much, and they were very worried about what he could do to her, because apparently he was very like controlling and whatnot. And that's whenever we actually meet the criminal, Diane, because Diane actually ended up dating him. She actually had moved in with him and was dating him. And so she was really attempting to take everything that was once Maeve's as hers. Basically, she was trying to take her life. And that's whenever things really got interesting. I immediately had the feeling whenever I saw Maeve, not Maeve, when I saw Diane and she went out to call out for Dr. Spencer or Dr. Reed. And I was like, how does she know him? Because usually people don't acknowledge people that easily, and especially by their titles without knowing exactly what their title is. I just had a weird feeling. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure she's the killer. And then they announced it, like they said, it was like maybe 5-10 minutes into the episode. And I'm like, oh, I was right. Anyways, but it was very weird how that played out. Interesting. So yeah. Don't automatically assume that you have a male stalker. It could be a female. All right, so we're going to look at the criminal victim prevention. So then we have Diane. Obviously, Diane, we know she was in an orphanage. Her parents killed themselves at a very young age, and she was placed into an orphanage. We don't really know too much else. But what we can deduce that she probably didn't have adequate emotional support, meaning that she had to probably self-inflate her own ego. She might, and I totally don't know because I'm not going to try to diagnose anybody, but she might have, developed narcissistic traits to cope with the feeling of not having the emotional support that a loving, stable family would actually provide. So she might have some narcissistic personality traits. I'm not going to say disorder. She could have benefited from having some coping skills to deal with the rejection. Obviously, it is not easy to deal with rejection. Being told no seems to be an issue with a lot of people, especially men, but that's beside the point. But coping skills can help. Whenever someone says no, it's not the end of the world. It doesn't mean that you have to take everything away from that person that said no. It just means that there's better options for you out there, because obviously if somebody said no, then it's not meant to be, right? Right. Okay. So also Diane could have, it all boils down to social support. If Diane had social support, then she would have been able to not fixate on Maeve and not stalk Maeve, not hyper-focus on Maeve. Instead, she stalked her and created tension between her and her fiance until she finally just pushed him away, and then she snatched him up, and then she started breaking into her house and taking her clothes and then kidnapping her and then killing Bobby and then killing her. So it's like a whole ordeal. Why? Whenever we could have just created healthy support for this person. But again, there's a lot of other factors that could also play into these types of things, because she probably also didn't think that she had much of an issue. So you can't force somebody to get therapy. You can't force somebody to actually put in the work and better themselves. They have to realize it and do it themselves in order for it to be a genuine transformation. Okay? Then we have Maeve. Obviously, I'm not a victim blamer, at all. I believe all victims, but there is nothing wrong with taking safety precautions. I lived alone at one point. I lived in I lived in another city, in another state, 500 plus miles away from my family. And you know what? I still took safety precautions. Like, I made sure that I kept myself safe in all shapes and forms as much as I could. Especially if you move to a large city that's larger than what you're used to, and you're the only one living on your own. So, you kind of have to learn how to take certain safety precautions. She could have installed alarms. Again, I mean, I also didn't realize, I don't know what year this episode came out in, but there's things that you can do these days. She could have had a taser. She could have bought a taser in case somebody tried to do something. She could have had a knife. She could have had pepper spray. She could have had something to at least fend off as much as possible a potential offender. She could have collected potential evidence, any phone calls. She could have recorded any phone calls. She could have collected any text messages, any letters, any notes that might have been left for her. She could have collected that. She could have collected it, made copies, turned the copies into law enforcement. She could have showed law enforcement that she has the originals, but then told them that she's going to keep them in her possession because you can do that. Like there's things that she could have done. She was being stalked for 10 months. Now, again, I'm not a victim blamer. I don't victim blame. But we live in 2023, and sadly, we have to protect ourselves. Now, again, I totally forgot that I don't know what year that this took place in or was like staged to take place in, and I didn't check. Sorry. But anyways, lastly, what Maeve could have done was communicated her suspicions to her support group or to her support circle. Like, for instance, me. I have at least 3 people that I report my, my life to. And I guess report's not the best term, but there's 3 people that I know, or that I make sure know what my whereabouts are, my current, whatever's going on. If I notice something sus, I tell my support circle, so then that way they know that if something happens, at least they have a lead. At least they have something to go off of, something to tell the police to be like, yeah, no, this so-and-so was doing this to her or whatever. You know what I mean? So communicate. Communication is super important, super key, especially if you're a female in 2023. Communicate your suspicions to your support circle. Communicate your suspicions to your support circle. It is that important. It can definitely cut down the time and the effort that it takes to try to find you if you go missing. So yeah. My conclusion. Anyways. Therapy. Therapy is always a good idea for like anybody. If you're a bad person or if you're a good person, therapy. Therapy. Therapy teaches knowledge of how to deal with potential life problems like rejection. Like I was saying, therapy is so convenient. Also, therapy is super convenient. So if you end up experiencing a type of trauma, if you end up experiencing a traumatic or stressful event that bothers you, therapy, if you've been going to therapy, you have coping skills that can help you manage the symptoms following traumatic experiences. Just saying. Because I can guarantee you, comparing my life now, like me experiencing traumatic experiences now, I can keep my thoughts in order. Whereas 6 years ago, it was not that easy. 6 years ago, a traumatic event did happen to me, and guess what? I lost it. But now I have control. I have a lot more control over my mental capacity and my self-awareness, so much more. Like, it's so much better and so much easier now. Anyways, so therapy. Always utilize therapy, no matter if you're good or bad or whatever, because it's going to help you no matter what. It can help you from making poorer decisions. Profiling. Gender profiling in criminal cases can be wrong until more evidence shows up. So obviously, they were looking at male motives and stuff. They were at first they were focused on Bobby being the culprit, and then they visited him, and that's whenever they met Diane, and then after things started like not making sense, they were like, oh, maybe it's a woman. So yeah, that's exactly how that basically goes. It's always important that if something's not adding up, then maybe shift your perspective a little bit, and maybe the answer is right in front of you. And honestly, that applies to like a lot of different scenarios. It doesn't necessarily have to be criminal profiling. It can literally be in anything. If something is not adding up, shift the perspective around, and then guess what? You might have your answer. And then lastly, support. Making sure that you have support is so important and so key. And like I said, it's not like you have to depend on your whole entire family to be your support system. You can literally just set yourself up with like 3 people that you know that you can trust, and that can be your support group. Those are your people that you know, that you feel comfortable with, that you can trust, that you can call up any given day and time and be like, I'm having a really rough day. Can we go and grab a coffee? Or can you come over and visit me for an hour? Or can we take a drive together? Or something. Those are your people that should know everything going on with you. Not okay, let me take that back, because obviously, we don't want to like word vomit all over people and like expect them to carry our weight. But what we can do is make sure that we have proper communication with these people. So that way they're aware of your moods and any potential warning signs. Whenever I was going through my QPR certification, for those who don't know, QPR is basically like the mental health version of CPR. So if somebody is in the middle of a mental health emergency, I'm certified to be able to help them find proper help as soon as possible. And I lost my train of thought. Oh yeah, one of the things that they teach you is to watch out for those warning signs. If you see somebody who is struggling and you can tell, you know what questions to ask. You know how to get them to start talking to you, and not try to dodge you. And then there's certain steps that you can take to be able to pinpoint those symptoms and how they're feeling and help them get the proper help that they need. So yes, your support group, that's a really good start. Make sure that they know everything not everything is going on in your life, but communicate the important things that you feel could be important if something happens. It's like me. I don't just have my husband as my emergency contact. I have my sister as my emergency contact as well. So that way I know that there are 2 people that are going to be contacted if something happens to me. And that's 2 people that I know that I can 100% depend on to be there if I need them to be. So, yeah, that's all I have for everybody today. And I know I have been getting a lot faster with these. I promise eventually they'll get longer. Maybe not in this series, to be honest, because the episodes are only 47 minutes long. But for anybody who might be interested in a podcast, I'm working on a personal podcast called Inside the Mind of a Psych Student. And that where basically I'm going to use current events, and I'm going to talk about how current events and their potential psychological implications of these current events. Namely, the inaugural episode is going to be over the Ohio train derailment. So I think that's going to be a really interesting one. And then also, my lovely sister came up with the amazing idea that I should also start another podcast that's going to be unrelated to the wellness standpoint, but it's definitely it's gonna have a little razzle dazzle, and it's gonna be called The Audacity, because apparently, according to my sister, I have really crazy and amazing stories, and I'm really excited to share them with you all. Anyways, that's what I have upcoming. So if anybody is super interested about hearing me talk more, there are some other things that are in the works if whenever this ends, because we're coming up on 5 more episodes of Inside the Criminal Mind. So once this ends, another thing will begin, and then we'll be off. Yeah. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Inside the Criminal Mind. This was the 7th episode. I'm super excited to be closing this up here soon. Like I said, there's 5 more episodes, so make sure that you tune in for episode 8 next Thursday. Have a great week, guys, or everybody.